Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great week. I think that the case study, the St. Vincent de Paul case study that we read this week was really interesting and a really great example of how even social enterprises and nonprofit enterprises need to have a viable way to make money, to exist, and to be able to offer the services that they do. The case study that took place over the course of 30 years or so, from the 80s up to 2000, really highlighted that for the business and the struggle that the business went through, to be able to get to a point where it was producing at a level that it could, that it enabled the social mission that the company existed for, right? So I think that can be a hard bridge for folks, to really understand, because not-for-profit is obviously a very different model than for-profit industry, but they can both benefit from having people who think in both of those ways, right? So a nonprofit organization such as St. Vincent de Paul was not really able to have a viable business model until they hired someone who worked in for-profit business and could help them with the business model that they needed in order to be able to secure the ability to provide the services that they wanted to provide to folks. So I do think that, that's a really important, that was a really important point for me in the story, is the crossover that could be helpful. And if we even think about for-profit enterprise, like, they could definitely also benefit from having someone with a nonprofit mindset that might help them in how they would further their social enterprises. As we talked about last week, a lot of businesses now are really understand that things that are important to consumers have to also be important to the business if they want to, continue to have those consumers. And so I think that, that's a place where, where that mindset can cross over between social and economic enterprise. So I found that to be interesting. I thought it was really cool. And then, of course, looking up the business, I loved that it was an Oregon business, so that was fun. And then looking it up and seeing sort of what they're doing today. And, in the article that I read about today, they talked about how they are a 501c nonprofit. And they've changed their name, actually, which I thought was really interesting too. So to DPI Group, which is a much more, I don't know, like an economically viable name, I guess I would say. If you think about like any type of St. Vincent or anything that's related to that, you're going to think of a religious enterprise, a nonprofit enterprise, charitable enterprise likely. And so I think that not disguising it, that's probably not the right term to use, but changing the name to DPI Group sort of blends easier in with other industries of the same. So, where they're providing staffing services and doing that in a really unique way, but still competing in an industry that is heavily saturated. They've come up with this, kind of very professional and economic enterprise type name. So that stuck out at me. Obviously, they've also grown their revenue significantly since the study in 2000. The page that I was looking at says that they're up to $27 million in revenue in their most recent fiscal year. So definitely, and they have like 6 offices now, I think, with one even in Washington. So they've expanded into Washington as well. So that was cool. And then also talked about how it's 99.9% self-funded. So clearly that model is still working for them. They're able to fund the organization almost entirely on their own. And they're employing, thousands of disabled folks every year, and giving them opportunities that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have access to. So just a really cool model overall. I also think, as we thought about, whether or not it's socially innovative, and going back to Portali's definition of that. And so I do think that, from reading the study, we can all probably likely agree that it filled a need that existed for disabled people who are able to work on a part-time basis, but maybe need some extra training or need, an employer who will enable them to have those opportunities. And so definitely filled a need in that area. And clearly, like I said, employing thousands of people every year. So definitely saw that was an innovative need that was needed, doing something new or different. So making that innovative piece, right? And this was definitely a very different model than any other staffing agency was offering. And certainly it helped them in getting government contracts. And so that was, obviously one way that they were able to use their own sort of innovation in this staffing industry to be able to gain the contracts they needed and get the economic support that they needed. Bringing change to social structures, yes. So this is another way where they're showing that people who may have disabilities can still be gainfully employed and can still provide services that are in demand and necessary within industry. So I do think that changes the thinking around, what it means to be disabled and how you can otherwise engage, even still with in an economic way to provide for yourself or your family and your community. So I think that's important, and that maybe helps people think differently about folks that are in that, that may fall under the being disabled. And then increase society's capacity to act. So it's also like giving much more opportunity to people in these situations to be able to help themselves. And, also allowing employers to support an organization that maybe aligns with their values and, what they think is important to their company or to their consumer. So I definitely think that in that way, the organization has certainly increased the society's capacity to act in this regard, like seeing what's actually realistic to be achieved in this industry, and seeing how successful St. Vincent de Paul has been here. So those are my thoughts on the reading this week, and I'm really super looking forward to reading all of your thoughts, and I hope you all are having a fantastic week. Thank you so much.